Hopefully it's on. Yeah, it's being green light. Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another edition of Chess Chat, a program brought to you live from the Workers' Credit Union studios at Fitchburg Access Television. I am George Marajanian, Program Director of the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University. This club had been meeting every Wednesday evening from 7 to 11 in room C-159 in the McKay complex at the university. But we have been in suspension since early March of this year because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Hopefully, we will return to in-person chess play at the university once we are given the green light that we can return and safely play at McKay complex. But with me today, once again, for this episode of Chess Chat is our award-winning director, Darren Dame of Fitchburg, the winner of the FATV's prestigious Boulder Award in 2009. And with him is a longtime and very dedicated Wachusett Chess Club member, Brian Bigelow, also of Fitchburg. And across from me is my trusty co-host, a chess author, a chess player, a website, assistant website person at Fitchburg, Wachusett Chess Club. That's Dave Couture of Westminster. Hello, Dave.
Hi, George. How are you?
Very good, Dave. Well, Dave, for this edition of Chess Chat, we're going to devote our attention to a player who was one of the top chess players in the world. Back actually in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, up into the late 60s, but he was a child prodigy. And he actually amazed the chess world back,
100 years ago.
100 years, in fact, 100 years ago.
Yep.
It's 100 years ago. Well, actually, let's say who he is.
Right.
This is Grandmaster Sam Reshevsky. Sammy Reshevsky. He was born Shmuel Herman Reshevsky. That was actually his name.
Oh, okay.
Because he was born in Poland, a village in Poland, central Poland, named Ozorkov, on November 26, 1911. And he lived in Poland with his parents. They were Orthodox Jews, a very strict family he grew up in, a family of six. He was the sixth child of his parents. And he learned chess at the age of 4. That's a very young age to learn chess.
Yep.
And it wasn't very soon after he learned chess, there's an incident that happened that really astounded both his parents and friends of his, that after he was taught the game at the age of 4, he watched the game between his father and a friend, and he demonstrated to his father after the game how his father could have saved the game. Here's a kid who's being shown how to play chess,
Right.
and he's telling his father, "No, Daddy, this is how you could have saved the game."
Right.
That's phenomenal for a kid at age 4 to be able to do that.
Was he 4 at that time?
He was 4 at that time when he did this. He did this, yeah. So but really he made his mark by the age of 8. Is that what he really made his mark? Because he was acclaimed as a prodigy. In fact, he was a prodigy who played in exhibitions all over Europe, primarily in Germany, the Netherlands, France, and England. He gave exhibitions, simultaneous exhibitions, where he took on players at the same time.
Right.
And he also played blindfold. He could actually play.
I didn't realize
he
that,
was able.
yeah.
Yes, at the age of 8, he was also able to play blindfold. But most of his exhibitions were where he had sight of the board.
Right.
And he usually played between 15 and 20 players. But we are going to present, before we present the game.
We have some photos, right? Of
We got some
those
photos.
exhibitions, right?
Darren has some interesting historical photos. Now, this is an early photo of an exhibition. There's Sammy in the middle. You can see he's the small boy in the middle. This was taken somewhere in Europe, maybe France or Germany, one of those two countries. So let's find another. There's another shot of Sammy from the rear here at an exhibition. Again, this is all in Europe. This one actually is an exhibition in France. I believe this is Paris, France.
Okay.
1920, this was played. And again, that's a great photo of Sammy. He's 8 years old in this photo. This was in Germany. The German caption. The German caption will say, Ein Wunderkind, a wonder child, a prodigy. The 8-year-old Sammy Reshevsky plays against 22 opponents successfully, playing successful chess against 22 opponents. And that's what Sammy did. Here's another exhibition. Oh, that's the same one, yes. That's Sammy in Germany. That was, and this one is actually, now this is one, says 1921 in San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah, because he did come to the United States.
Right.
Actually, at the end of 1920, his family moved to the United States, settled in the United States in Spring Valley, New York. But he was actually already with his family but was giving exhibitions all over this country. Yeah. In fact, he actually gave an exhibition in Boston in 1921 at the Lorimer Hall. Now, I never heard of Lorimer Hall until I looked it up. It's a hall that was inside a Baptist church called on Tremont Street, 88 Tremont Street.
Okay.
He gave an exhibition in Boston. Here is one that he gave against on the right, Sammy's on the left, Frank Marshall, who's a multi-time U.S. champion. He's playing him in the United States. This is probably in New York, because he actually lived in New York. Okay, any other photos of Sammy? Now, I wonder how many of our chess chat viewers can identify the man who is sitting on the right playing Sammy. I wonder if there's anybody at home watching this right now and say, wait a minute.
We can give him a clue. He's a famous actor.
He's a very famous, mostly for silent films.
Right.
He performed in, did he actually play in talkies? I think he did
That
later.
I don't know.
But he was known for silent films. Let's give it, who is this?
Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie Chaplin, who was an avid chess player,
Yeah.
who played Sammy when he was out in California. So that's the famous Charlie Chaplin playing Sammy Reshevsky in California. Okay, any other photos of Sammy that we can see? We'll go on to any other.
Later in life.
Now this photo was taken, I believe, well actually it was taken, this is let's identify who the three people. Sammy is on the left. He's the shortest one there with the hat on. He is standing there next to, the fellow in the middle is Reuben Fine. Reuben Fine was one of the top chess players in the world back in the 1930s and 40s. And Reuben Fine is standing in the middle, and next to him, on the right, far right, is Mikhail Botvinnik. Now, Botvinnik, anyone who plays chess seriously knows the name of Botvinnik. Botvinnik became the world champion in 1948 when he, Botvinnik, and Sammy Reshevsky, and Reuben Fine, who was invited to a world championship tournament, Reuben said, I'm too busy with my work. He was a psychologist. He said, I'm too busy doing my work. I can't come in and play. But Sammy and Botvinnik and two other Soviet players named Paul Carey's. In fact, we've done a chess chat program on Paul Carey's. And Vasily Smyslov. We've done a show on Vasily Smyslov. Those three Soviet players, and Sammy Reshevsky and Max Euwe. You know the name Max Euwe, who was a former world champion? Those five people played in the world championship match in 1948. It was played in both The Hague, it was split in two. It was a round robin, double round robin, in The Hague in the Netherlands, and in Moscow, and Botvinnik won the world championship. It was only because of Alexander Alyekhin, who was the world champion. He died in March 1946, and the world championship title was vacant for a couple of years. So they held, the World Chess Federation said, wait a minute, we got to find a world champion. So in 1948, they held this championship.
But now I read that it was either that one or maybe a later one that, you know, there had always been the charge, especially by Fischer, that there was collusion amongst the Soviet players, and they did admit that in the that tournament with Reshevsky was in, there was
Yes, right.
collusion where they would play.
Well, look, you had 3 Soviet players, 1 American, and 1 Dutch player.
Right.
And so there was actually, yes.
So there was a tendency they would play easy games against
each other. Right, yeah.
But when they played
Yeah, so there was
non-Soviet,
there was a collusion.
Yeah.
Now, do we have any okay, so this is actually a more recent photo of Sammy. Sammy died at the age of 80 on April 4th, 1992. Again, he lived in Spring Valley, New York. That's actually where he settled. And I met him, I can't remember the exact years, in the 80s at U.S. Opens. He actually won the U.S. Open 3 times in his career. The last time was in 1944 in Boston.
Okay.
He happened to be in Boston in the mid-1940s. He was living in Boston because he had a job as an accountant. You said actually he went to school.
Went to college for that,
Went
right.
to University of Chicago, got a degree in the early 30s,
Right.
and actually practiced the work of an accountant. And he found work in Boston in the mid-40s. He had no intention of playing in the U.S. Open in Boston, but he said, hey, the U.S. Open is coming to Boston. I might as well play.
Right, yep.
And he won the tournament. He's an 8-time U.S. champion. That's a closed championship.
Right.
He won it 8 times in his career.
Which is tied for the record with Fischer, right?
Yes, Fischer also won the U.S. championship 8 times. So Sammy Reshevsky is was one of the top, chess professionals, not only in this country but in the world.
Right. Yep.
Now, we're going to present one of Sammy's simultaneous exhibition games. He played this in 1920. It was January, I can tell you the exact date, January 14th, 1920 in Berlin, Germany. This is right after World War I.
Okay.
And he played it against a player who lived in Germany, who was actually of Austrian ancestry. His name was Ladislaus von Dury. His real Hungarian first name was Laszlo, but it was Germanized to Ladislaus. So we're going to present to our viewers a very interesting game that this 8-year-old prodigy played against Ladislaus von Dury, and you're going to play Sammy's first move as white. What does Sammy play as his first move? We're going to see this on our screen. Okay, there we see it. What did he play?
E4.
Okay, a very good opening move, as we've said all along.
Right, and back then it was probably the most common.
Yes, I would say it was the most popular opening move of all moves back, more than 100 years ago, definitely. All right, so how did von Dury, good old Ladislaus, respond?
Played E5.
Okay, so we have a double king pawn. We have a double, what they call a double king pawn opening,
Yep.
but we don't have an exact name of this
Right.
opening yet. So how did Sammy continue? Move 2, what did he do?
So move 2, he plays F4.
Okay, wait a minute. What do we have here?
So this is called the King's Gambit, and this was extremely popular 100 years ago and beyond. This was,
Yes.
again, this was probably one of the most common openings that was played because they wanted to play wide open.
They played
gambits.
They played gambits. They
Right.
played swashbuckling chess
Yep.
more than 100 years ago.
There was no quiet chess. There was no position.
They weren't timid. There were no timid souls back more than 100 years ago. So wait a minute. We've got a gambit. Now, how does one handle a gambit? What does one do against a gambit when
So
you're off on a
essentially your
poly?
choices are you can accept the gambit by taking,
Yes.
or you can decline it by.
What are some good decline?
You
If
know,
you want to
could-
decline
you
it,
could decline by just pushing the pawn to
in
guard
fact,
it.
that move I think Bobby Fischer recommended. There's a Fischer defense.
Well, I think he recommended it after
After
accepting.
taking, yes, he
yeah.
accepted the pawn, but then continue with D6.
Additionally, he could bring
Right.
the knight out to defend it.
Now, can black actually, as a way to decline it, can play the bishop out to C5?
Sure,
That's also
right.
a
It
good
could
move.
even just
If you're going to decline it, bishop C5 is a good move.
develop, right?
Can we also do a counter gambit? Can black
Right, and then
actually
there's
play?
the Faulkner
D5.
counter gambit, yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Yep.
one way, the Faulkner counter gambit. So there's different ways. You can decline it, you can accept it, you can offer a counter gambit.
Yep.
So what did von Dury do?
He accepted by
He
taking
said,
knight
"Oh, hey."
E4.
Okay. So now, what?
So this
what are the
tends to lead
choices?
to wild games.
This
These
can
are-
lead to wild games?
Usually leads to a wild game.
Okay.
And it gets even wilder when, so typically here, Yeah, I used to play the king's gambit. I would put the knight here
Yes.
to stop
The
this queen to come in for
Right.
a check.
That makes sense.
But that's not what Reshevsky plays. He plays bishop to c4, which makes it an even crazier game now.
Yes. Now, what does that move? It's a good looks like a good developing
Good
move.
developing move.
I see it also vacates the F1 square for the king.
Right, so that now if the queen does come here, the king can slide over. But this, this is crazy, right?
He forfeits castling.
Forfeits
Right, he's
castling. The rook is blocked in.
Right. All right.
But
So Sammy played bishop c4. What did Ladislaus do on his?
so he plays bishop e7. So he's developing the bishop,
Right.
but he's still got this threat of bishop coming in here.
Okay, that's a threat. So how did Sammy continue though?
So now he develops, brings the knight out
Okay.
to f3.
That's his fourth move. Knight f3.
Yep.
Okay.
You got that?
So what does Funduri do now on his
Now
fourth
he
move?
does play bishop
Aha.
h4 check.
All right, so he checks. Now, does Sammy move the king over to f1 because
No,
he didn't check?
he blocks with the pawn.
Oh, he blocks
So
with
it's
the pawn.
different. See, if the queen had been here, this wouldn't have worked because
Right.
this pawn would have been pinned.
Right. Okay.
But with the bishop, he can interpose the pawn.
And that's what he did. All right, so Ladislaus does what? No, he
So now
takes
he captures on g3.
on his fifth move. And what does Sammy do on his move here? On his sixth move? It's Sammy's sixth move. He does what?
He's going to castle. If he were to take,
Oh, yeah.
if he were to take, the bishop comes here check, and now the
king has to move.
He can't castle. So
No, that would be bad.
so he does castle.
Okay, that's his sixth move. All right, what does Black do now on
Now
his,
Black-
on his
Captures on h2. He's now won 3 pawns.
three pawn? Wait a minute, he got
3 pawns.
Black
he's
is
won.
3 pawns ahead.
3 pawns ahead.
And
And
all right, so
Reshevsky does, I think the smart thing, which is, if he were to capture here,
yes.
that king is going to be wide open.
So he hides. So
he
looks
hides.
like
He hides behind the pawn.
So he hides behind the pawn on h2.
Yep.
Okay, I see he's hiding. Okay, so it is now Black's move here. His seventh move. What does Ladislaus do now?
So he develops knight to h6.
Okay, he doesn't want to play to f6 because it blocks the queen from
Right.
coming out and defending the bishop. Oh, he has to defend the bishop. So yes, the knight, if it's going to develop, has to go to h6.
Yep.
What does Sammy do now on his eighth move?
So he develops. So he plays d4,
Oh.
opening lap. So now the bishop is threatening to capture the knight,
Right.
double the pawns.
Right. Okay. So what does Black do in response to?
So
d4?
Black ignores that threat.
Yes.
And he could have, say, pushed the pawn on to d5 so he could bring the bishop in to help with the attack.
Is that what the computer recommends?
Yep.
The
yep.
computer recommends d5,
d5, but that's
attacking
not
the
what he played.
bishop. Okay.
He plays queen e7,
Okay. That was his eighth move.
and
And now Sammy
so
does what?
Reshevsky does in fact take the knight on h6.
And Black only has one move in response to that.
Yep. So Black
gonna-
recaptures.
Okay.
So now
We're going to see, we're going to see the G pawn take the bishop on
Yep.
h6. Wait a minute, we got I see
So-
triple pawns on the H file. here.
he's up 3 pawns, but they're all on the H file blocking
Have you
it
ever
up.
actually, have you
I
ever
don't
been
think I've
involved
ever-
in a game
I
where you've
don't
seen
think
triple
so.
pawns?
I don't think I've ever.
I'm trying to think the last time I ever saw triple
It's very
pawns.
rare.
Very rare to see triple pawns. Yeah. All right, so now it's White's move.
So the king
Sammy's
is kind of safe back there. It's,
Yeah, yeah. It's safe hiding behind that pawn on h2.
He's hiding behind 3 pawns.
Okay. All right. So now what do we do? What
Okay,
does
so
Sammy
now he's going to play the knight here. He could have, potentially just kept developing.
do? Oh, and defend the pawn on e4.
Bring the knight here, defend this pawn, threaten to attack, threaten this.
Okay.
But he didn't. This, again, this is an 8-year-old playing.
He's
who
playing
knows how
multiple
how many
players.
players, yeah.
all right.
Plays knight t5, which is,
Look,
you can see
looks
why.
good.
You've now got three pieces: the bishop, the
Wow.
knight, and the rook, all
Three
aiming,
pieces attacking the pawn on f7.
attacking that pawn.
And it's only defended twice
Yeah.
by the wrong pieces, by the way.
Yep. And so
So what does Black do?
Black pulls the bishop back, so he's at least blocking the rook from
Okay,
attacking.
that's one less piece attacking the pawn
It's
on
attacking,
f7.
and he's also
Yeah, right.
attacking the knight.
The knight, getting rid of that knight. Yes, okay. So what does Sammy do in
So,
response to bishop f6 on his 11th?
Reshevsky plays queen h5,
Ooh.
so now he brings yet another piece,
Piling pressure on the pawn
piling
on f7.
pressure on.
Okay. So now it's Ladislaus' 11th move. What does he do?
So he plays rook f8 to defend the pawn.
Okay, looks like a good move.
Of course, now he's not going to be able to castle either,
Right,
so his king's
right.
going to be stuck in the middle.
Okay. Sammy's 12th move, what does he do?
12th move,
Oh, wow.
knight takes on f7.
Okay, so he does take, because he was piling up on that pawn
Yep.
with the bishop, the knight, the queen. So what does black do in response to this after knight takes on f7?
So he plays queen takes e4, a check.
Check.
So he's checking the king.
Okay. So now what does Sammy do on his 13th move?
13th move, he plays king takes h2.
So now he takes the pawn.
Now he takes the pawn.
Okay,
Yep.
on his 13th move. And how does black continue with his 13th move?
Well, his 13th move, he's going to take the pawn on c2.
Did he have something better?
His best bet, he's
Oh, he was better actually going...
better just to
going
go queen here.
Oh, in
check,
exchange
and
queens.
just force the queens off the board.
Okay, that was better for him.
When you're trying to defend an attack, it helps to trade off
Simplify.
pieces.
Right.
Yeah. But he
Instead,
decided to grab that pawn.
well, this is like greed. It looks like black has become greedy and taken
But
the
he
pawn.
does have threats, right? So he's
Yes.
taking the pawn. He's threatening the bishop on
Right.
c4.
Right.
He's threatening to take this pawn, which would be
Attacking-
attacking the rook.
Okay.
So he's got his own threats.
And he's forcing, actually with this check with the queen on c2, he's actually forcing the king to move because he can't block.
He actually,
Could he
it turns out that the
He could
the
block?
computer,
Actually,
this is something that only a computer would come up with.
Really?
Blocking with the knight
Really?
to
Blocking-
allow this rook to get into the game.
Yeah, but then he would take the knight with check. And then
Yeah,
the
he
king would
could take with check, and then the king would hide away on
hide away.
h1.
Oh, okay.
So
I see the king could
this
be
is
able to hide.
something that would not be at all obvious to a
Only a
human.
computer would come up
Only a
with something like
computer
this.
come
I
up
don't
with
think a human ever would consider
So this
something like
seems perfectly reasonable, just to move the king to g3.
Okay, fine. So now what does black do?
Now
It's
this is the
actually-
move you had said something about. I had thought I didn't see any point to
It-
doing this, to just giving up the bishop.
Yes,
But
but you know what black is doing? He's trying to swindle this little 8-year-old kid.
Sure. He's kind of desperate.
He's desperate. He says, you know,
he's looking like
he
he's-
knows he's losing.
he knows he's losing.
So he's trying to actually pull a fast one.
Right. So he's hoping, like you said, that he's hoping he's going to take with the king.
Right, exactly.
And if he does that, he's going to be in trouble after
Oh, yeah.
black pushes his pawn.
Well, actually, what he would first do is check with the queen, I believe.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Bring the queen over h2, check for...
All
and
right.
then
So bring the queen here. Right.
And then force the king to
the king has
g4.
to. Right, the king has to go here. Now he could
Oh.
push. It's check with the bishop. So
Yeah, and this actually, believe it or not, we don't have time to deal with this, but this would actually lead to a black win. Black would win this.
yeah.
If Sammy had taken that bishop with the king, he loses.
Right.
But Sammy,
Even at the age of 8.
even at the age of 8, he saw, no, I can't take that bishop with the king.
But
Yeah,
But like you're saying, if you're black, it's called a swindle, right?
Swindle, right.
If you're desperate, you do something, you hope the guy makes the wrong move, and now you're suddenly back in the
you
game.
know who is known as the great swindler in chess in this country? Frank Marshall. Have you ever heard of the Marshall swindle? Frank Marshall, we showed a photo of
Yep.
Frank Marshall playing Sammy at a young age. I mean, and Frank Marshall has the reputation of being the biggest chess swindler in the United States
Yeah.
in his career. Yeah.
There is somewhat of an art to it. There's
There
even
is
a
an
recent,
art.
there's even a recent book, I think,
Have
called...
you ever been swindled? I've been
Yeah,
swindled.
I've been swindled.
You
I've swindled others. I mean,
Okay. All right, but Sammy did not get swindled.
he didn't go for it.
I didn't go for it.
He did the correct thing. He captures with the queen,
Right.
and so now he's actually threatening to come down here,
Oh, wow. wow.
checkmate.
Okay, so it's black's move here, right?
So it's black's move.
So
So
what did Ladislaus do here?
this is a little bit of a swindle
All right.
in return, because it's like, well, look, a free bishop. He takes
Wow, he
the
grabs
bishop
the bishop.
on
Yeah.
c4,
Wow. So,
and
all right, let's look. Now let's see the position on our board here.
yeah,
Okay.
we have it. That's correct.
All right, so let's see it again. Okay, we're gonna see. We see actually the board you have.
Yeah.
Now, what did Sammy do?
So his final move, he
Wait a minute, this is checkmate.
checkmates.
The game is. Wait a minute, the game is over.
So the game is over.
Yeah.
The knight on f7 is covered by the rook. So
Right. It's right.
So that's it.
Sammy won this. This was a 16-move game that Sammy won at the simultaneous exhibition in
at
Berlin.
the age of
Germany.
8.
Now, I see by the clock on the wall that we have time to still talk about Sammy.
We could,
You know,
Go ahead.
you mentioned to me that Sammy's parents were brought to court.
right, yeah, when I started reading about him, I sort of felt bad for him because it seemed like his parents were, or his father was using him like almost as a trained
Yes.
circus act
He was.
to make money.
He was
you know,
living vicariously through his son,
and making money.
making money. He was bringing him around to all these exhibitions, like in Europe, and then when he came to this country, going around giving.
And I read,
exhibitions.
that they specifically came to this country for that purpose, so he could,
Yes, they came to, and they actually were making living off their son.
yeah.
Charges were filed against the parents back in 1922, I believe, and he was brought to court. Now, I want to read from a book by a well-known chess historian named Edward Winter. It's called
yeah.
Chess Explorations. In his book, a potpourri from the journal of his chess notes. He's a well-known,
Yeah, I've heard of him.
you heard of Edward Winter, the chess historian. I want to read to you what was reported in the British Chess Magazine in the January 1923 edition of that. I'll try to read as quickly as I can.
You've got time.
It said, the Reshevsky case was decided at the Children's Court in Manhattan on November 15th, that was 1922, when a motion for the dismissal of the case was granted on the ground that the charge of improper guardianship had not been sustained. The evidence for the prosecution was insufficient, in the judge's opinion, to show that the boy's health or morals were in danger of being impaired. And testimony as to his education at the rabbinical school on East Broadway was put in by the defense. Now, the Brooklyn Eagle newspaper said that after dismissing the case, the judge, Judge Levy, recommended that in order to prevent undue exploitation of Sammy's remarkable powers, someone outside of the immediate family be designated to act as a sponsor and make occasional reports to the court concerning his progress. An assemblyman, a New York assemblyman by the name of Perlman, said he undertook to do this on behalf of Sammy, who went home with his parents, delighted over the outcome of this, his first court appearance. So yes, so those charges that were filed against his parents of improper guardianship were dismissed by the judge as long as there's someone to sponsor and watch over Sammy.
Right, so then he actually started going to a normal school
Then
at
he
that
started,
point.
it was only at the age of 12. He had really, again, the father was taking advantage of his son.
Yep.
And it was only when Sammy was in this country, he'd already settled, that he saw his first school, going to school, and then he buckled down, and education was actually his
Right,
priority.
so he ended up going to, what did you say, the University of Chicago?
He went to the University of Chicago, got a degree in accounting, I think in 1933, 34, and became an accountant.
Right.
And that's why he was able to find a job as an accountant. Oh, by the way, before we...
That's right, we can't forget. Can't forget, yeah.
Can't forget. I did not know this until it was brought to my attention by Paul Godin, one of our staunch Wachusett chess members,
webmaster.
former chess club champion in 1967. He said, Sammy Reshevsky came to Fitchburg. I said, what? Sammy Reshevsky gave a simultaneous exhibition here in Fitchburg in the mid-1960s.
Right.
And you know where it was played? It was played the same place where Bobby Fischer performed his simul at the First Parish Unitarian Church at the Upper Common.
Yep.
Now, Fischer was here in March 1964, and I think Reshevsky was here 65, either early 65 or later in 65. But I did not know this.
But
I was in Germany.
You were in the army, right? At that point?
No, I was in the army in 67, but I had to be in Germany when that was done. I was totally unaware that Sammy Reshevsky, that little prodigy, showed up here in Fitchburg when he was in his mid-50s. So we hope that our Chess Chat fans enjoyed the game that we presented for our little 8-year-old Sammy Reshevsky, who really dazzled chess players and the chess world, more than 100 years ago.
Yep.
Okay, so stay tuned for our next edition of Chess Chat. We hope to bring you a very exciting and informative game on the next episode.